The first night in Tokyo, I stood in the middle of our new place and did something I didn't even realize I was doing until my body gave me away. I froze. Not because it was ugly, not because it was uncomfortable, but because everything was right there. The bed was right there. The desk was right there. The kitchen was right there. If I took 3 steps, I'd already crossed the entire world we were supposed to live inside. We moved from about 1,200 square feet to roughly 400, which sounds like a fun fact until you're holding a suitcase and you realize there isn't a later corner to drop it in. There isn't a spare room to hide the mess. There isn't a hallway to pretend you'll organize someday. In a place this small, your habits show up immediately, like footprints on fresh snow. And here's what surprised me most. This isn't just some extreme minimalist challenge. In Tokyo, living small isn't a quirky lifestyle choice. For a lot of people, it's simply normal. It's the price of living close to the life you actually want. And if you're thinking about moving here, or honestly, moving to any city where space is expensive, this video isn't going to be another cute apartment tour where everything looks perfect because the camera doesn't pan left. I'm going to tell you the real things we learned the hard way. The practical things. The things I wish someone had whispered to me before we signed the lease. What actually fits in a 400 square foot layout, and what doesn't. The storage hacks that work because they're simple, not because they're trendy. The mental shift that makes a small space feel calm instead of claustrophobic. The money reality, rent, utilities, and the weird ways living small can save you, or quietly cost you. And the part nobody talks about enough. How your social life changes when your home can't hold more than a few people without turning into a puzzle. If you've ever looked around your space and thought, why does my mind feel as crowded as this room? Stay with me. Because by the end, you won't just understand small living in Tokyo. You'll know how to move through it, lighter, clearer, and a little more at peace. And that's exactly where this story starts. For me, it wasn't a big life lesson at first. It was a number. Right after we moved, I kept catching myself doing the same nervous math in my head. 400 square feet. Is that tiny, or is that just Tokyo? Back home, that number sounds like a compromise. In Tokyo, it's often just the default setting, especially if you want to live close enough that your life doesn't get swallowed by commuting. Here's the thing that made it click for me. People love to quote average apartment size in Tokyo, but averages hide the real story. One commonly cited figure for the average Tokyo dwelling is about 65.9 square meters, roughly 710 square feet. But that number is total space, which can include things like small corridors and built-in storage. When you look at what's closer to true living space, the usable area can land around 41 square meters. And suddenly, our 400 square feet, about 37 square meters, doesn't feel like a shocking outlier anymore. It's not a closet. It's just slightly under what many people actually live in day to day. And if you zoom in on what a lot of single people rent in the city, the normal gets even smaller. A typical 1R or 1K apartment can sit roughly in that 1830 square meter range, and many 1K places are often described around 1525 square meters. So when you say 400 square feet, you're basically talking about a size that can feel almost generous compared to the tightest, most common layouts. Not luxurious, but livable. Enough to breathe if you stop fighting the space and start cooperating with it. What does that cooperation look like in real life? It looks like your home having a rhythm. You step into a tiny entryway where shoes live, and the outside world gets left at the door. You pass a compact bathroom that's built like a well-designed tool, not a spa. There's usually a small kitchenette, sometimes separated by a door, in a 1K so your bed doesn't smell like last night's curry. Then you arrive at the main room, the one space that has to be brave enough to be everything. Sleep, work, eat, rest, recover. This is where the comparisons helped me stop panicking and start planning. A king-size mattress is about 42 square feet of surface area. In a 400 square foot home, that's roughly 1/10 of your entire floor. If your bed is your whole personality, your apartment will feel like it's shrinking around you. But if your bed is one clear anchor and everything else earns its footprint, the space starts to make sense. It becomes less about what you can't fit and more about what you're no longer willing to carry. And yes, rent is the pressure that makes this lifestyle feel normal. In Tokyo's 23 wards, studio-type rents can vary widely by location, but it's not unusual to see figures around the high tens of thousands to well over 100,000 yen, depending on how central the ward is. When housing costs are heavy, people don't just downsize their rooms, they downsize their decisions. You stop buying the maybe items because there's nowhere to put them. You stop letting clutter sit unanswered because it physically blocks your next step. Utilities add their own quiet reminder. A common estimate for one person's monthly utilities is around 13,000 yen, give or take season and usage. In a small apartment, you feel every choice immediately. The heater, the AC, the lights you leave on out of habit. The space teaches you to notice. If you want one small action to take from this, do what I did on a tired night when I felt overwhelmed. Pick one anchor in your home, bed, desk, dining spot, and measure how much of your floor it claims. Don't judge it. Just see it. That one honest measurement can turn small into clear, and clarity is where Tokyo-style living starts to feel not only possible, but weirdly calming. After I measured the anchors in our place, something shifted. Not because the apartment magically got bigger, but because I stopped treating the space like a problem to solve, and started treating it like a routine to learn. You walk in, and the first thing that greets you is the genkan, that small threshold where the outside world ends and the home begins. It sounds poetic, but it's also extremely practical. Shoes come off, and right there you usually get a built-in shoe cabinet. Get a bako, because even your footwear needs a designated home when your floor is precious. A few steps later, the apartment starts showing its real shape, a narrow kitchenette leading into the one main room, and a compact bathroom tucked close by. In many 1K-style layouts, the kitchen is separated from the main room with a door, partly to keep cooking smells from drifting into your bedding. It's such a small detail, but it changes how your day feels. It lets sleep stay clean. It gives you a tiny boundary when you don't have many. In a 400-square-foot life, the main room isn't a living room, the way I used to mean it. It's a transformable zone. Our bed went against one wall because beds demand a commitment. Across from it, a desk that wasn't really a desk. It was also a dining table. Also, sometimes, a countertop for folding laundry. In Japan, even the language of floor plans quietly prepares you for this kind of overlap. 1R, 1K, 1DK. Like the home is telling you in advance how many identities you can realistically fit inside it. At first, I hated how everything touched everything. Later, I realized that's the point. You're not meant to spread out, you're meant to choose. Storage is where Tokyo apartments stop feeling like small and start feeling like intentional. You'll see deep built-in closets, sheer, often with sliding doors, originally designed to swallow futons and bulky items and give the room back to you when morning comes. Sometimes there's even a smaller cabinet above it, tenbukuro, for things you don't need every day. And the culture around storage is quietly specific. Vertical shelving that climbs toward the ceiling, hooks on walls, beds with drawers, foldable tables that disappear when you're done eating. I found little inventions that felt almost comically precise, like a slim rolling rack designed to fit into a 10-centimeter gap, because in a small home, even dead space is still space. But here's what I didn't expect, and I want to say it gently because it surprised me too. Small space living can press on your nervous system if you don't create breathing room on purpose. Hosting friends becomes complicated, not because you don't love them, but because your home can't hold extra bodies without swallowing your calm. The bathroom can be its own lesson in density. Many Japanese apartments use a modular unit bath system to pack everything efficiently into one waterproof shell. And psychologically, it's not just in your head. Research on residential crowding has linked more crowded living conditions with higher risks of mental strain, with stress that's specific to the living space itself. So, the practice becomes simple, almost quiet. You design micro-boundaries, a surface that must be cleared before sleep, a single basket where today's clutter goes so it doesn't spread like fog, a rule that the floor stays open because an open floor is an open chest. If you want one small action from this, try this tonight. Choose one horizontal surface, your table, your counter, your desk, and make it empty for just 10 minutes before bed. Not as discipline, as relief. And notice how, in a small apartment, that tiny clearing can feel like someone opened a window inside you. After that little 10-minute reset at night, I started noticing something almost embarrassing. The apartment wasn't the thing making me feel trapped. My habits were. The space was just honest enough to show me immediately what was working and what was quietly hurting me. The first change was learning to love furniture that refuses to have only one job. In a bigger home, you can afford single-purpose pieces. An extra chair, a side table, a bench that's mostly decorative. In a 400-square-foot life, that kind of furniture feels like a guest who never leaves. So, we chose pieces that could shapeshift without drama. A table that folds down when we're done eating. A desk that's also the place we do our budgeting, our emails, our life admin. Shelves that don't just hold books, but become boundaries. One shelf for daily essentials, one shelf for not right now. And the most Tokyo lesson of all, you don't always need a bed that sits there all day like a permanent announcement. There's a reason futons and low tables make sense here. When something can be folded, stacked, slid away, the room can change with your nervous system. You get a day mode and a night mode, and that simple switch can make your mind feel like it has permission to rest. Then there's the vertical world, which I used to ignore like it didn't count. But walls are not just walls in small living. They're silent storage. They're relief. Hooks by the door for bags and jackets so they don't end up on a chair, because that chair will become a mountain in 2 days. A slim wall shelf for the handful of items you truly use every morning, so your counter can stay clear. Tension rods, those simple poles that press between two surfaces, became weirdly magical. One inside a closet to double hanging space. One under the sink to create a second floor for cleaning supplies. A rolling cart that can move between the kitchen and the desk. Because sometimes you need your life to be mobile. Underbed storage for off-season clothes, but only if you're honest about what you actually wear. If you store everything, you're not maximizing space. You're postponing decisions. And that's where the third shift happened, the one that changed more than the apartment ever could. I started buying as if every object had to pay rent. Not money rent, space rent, attention rent, stress rent. The one-in, one-out rule sounds simple, almost too simple. But in a small home, it becomes a kind of protection. If something new comes in, something old has to leave. Not because you're punishing yourself, but because you're keeping a promise to your future self. You deserve to walk through your home without apologizing to it. Every item needs a home. If it doesn't have one, it doesn't belong here. And if you don't know where it lives, that's your answer. Finally, I learned that feeling bigger isn't about tricks. It's about sightlines. Light colors helped, yes, but more than that, fewer tall pieces made the room breathe. Keeping the floor visible made the space feel calmer. Letting natural light hit empty surfaces felt like a quiet reset button. Mirrors helped a little, but the real illusion of space came from restraint. Less visual noise, fewer competing corners, more open paths for your eyes to travel. If you want a small action from this, try one rule for tomorrow. Choose one surface, the desk, the kitchen counter, the little shelf by the door, and declare it a clear zone. Nothing lives there permanently. Only what you're using right now. That one boundary is how small apartments start to feel less like limitation and more like support. There's a moment, usually sometime after the boxes are unpacked, when the romance of Tokyo living fades and the numbers get loud. For me, it happened the first month we paid rent, and I realized the apartment wasn't just a design choice. It was a financial decision I would be repeating every 30 days. A 400-square-foot place in Tokyo often sits in that in-between category. Not a luxury family-sized home, but not the tiny sleeping capsule with a sink either. Depending on the layout, it can resemble a larger studio or a compact one, LDK. And rent swings hard based on where you want your life to be centered. In the outer wards, the market rent for a one-room place can sit around the high 50 yen, 000s to 70 yen, 000s a month, while a 1 LDK in those same areas often lands closer to roughly 100,000 yen to 140,000 yen. In the central wards, that same story shifts upward fast. One-room rents commonly move into the 90,000 yen to 130,000 yen range, and 1 LDKs can run from roughly the mid-yen 160,000s to well over 260,000 yen depending on the ward. And this is where Tokyo teaches you a quiet truth. Size isn't the thing you're really paying for. You're paying for proximity. You're paying for the minutes you get back when your commute shrinks, when errands become walkable, when your evenings stop being consumed by trains and transfers. Sometimes, a smaller place in a better location is expensive in a way that hurts at first, but it can also offset other costs. Less transit, less impulse spending to make up for exhaustion, less need to buy convenience because your life is too far away from itself. But I won't sugarcoat it. When you compare it to a bigger space, the gap can feel like a different universe. Look at the same market snapshot across Tokyo's 23 wards and you'll see 2 LDKs and 3 LDKs climb quickly, often into the 200 yen, 000s, and beyond, and in central areas far higher. If you're the kind of person who believes peace comes from extra rooms, Tokyo can make that belief painfully expensive. The surprising part for me was how the small space lifestyle affects the rest of your money, not just rent. Utilities, for example, don't disappear, but they can become more manageable when your footprint is smaller, if you live intentionally. A commonly cited baseline for one person's monthly utilities in Japan is around 13,000 yen, with electricity as the biggest piece, then gas, then water. In a small apartment, heating and cooling can cost less simply because there's less air to fight with. But there's also a hidden truth. The space responds immediately to your habits. Leave the AC running unnecessarily, and you feel it. Use smart boundaries, close doors, heat only the zone you're in, turn lights off like it actually matters, and the bills become quieter. Then there's the upfront spending, the part nobody warns you about. Bigger homes tempt you into buying furniture to fill them. A couch because a living room should have one. Extra shelving because empty walls feel wrong. In 400 square feet, that urge hits a wall. You buy fewer things, not because you're disciplined, but because the apartment refuses to hold your fantasy life. That limitation can become a kind of savings, but only if you don't replace it with expensive space hack shopping sprees that become clutter in disguise. If you want one small action from this, try a gentler kind of budgeting tonight. Write down your rent, then add 3 lines: electricity, gas, water, and estimate a monthly home total. Not to scare yourself, just to see your life clearly. Because when the numbers are visible, your choices stop feeling like punishment and start feeling like the calm you're building on purpose. After you stare at the rent and utilities long enough, you start to notice the second price tag you're paying. Not in yen, in lifestyle, in what your home can hold and what it quietly asks you to release. The first thing that changes is how you host. In my old life, come over meant comfort, a couch, a table. The kind of space where a conversation could sprawl without anyone noticing the time. In a 400 square foot Tokyo apartment, hosting becomes choreography. If 2 friends come, someone's bag has to live on a hook, not on the floor. If 4 people come, the room stops being a room and starts being a puzzle. You can do it, technically. Floor cushions, a low table, drinks from the fridge that has to open carefully so it doesn't knock into something. But you feel the edges of the space the entire time, and it changes your nervous system in a way you don't notice until everyone leaves, and you exhale like you've been holding your breath. At first, I felt ashamed of that, like I was failing at adulthood because I couldn't host properly. Then Tokyo taught me another way to be social. Let the city share the burden. You meet outside, and it isn't a downgrade. It's a different kind of intimacy. A neighborhood cafe where you can sit for an hour without needing to own the chair. A small kisaten where the light is quiet and the cups are warm. A park bench with coffee from the convenience store because you just needed to see a friend's face, not impress them with a living room. The city becomes your extended apartment, and the walls stop feeling like a limit. They start feeling like a boundary that protects your rest. And that's the second change. Your home's purpose sharpens. In a small space, if you try to make your apartment be everything, office, gym, party space, creative studio, guest house, it will start to feel like nothing. It will feel like pressure. So, you begin to assign roles to places, even if those places are only a few steps apart. The corner by the window is for work, but only until a certain time. The table is for dinner, not for endless piles of, "I'll deal with this later." The bed is for sleep, not for scrolling until your eyes burn. These aren't rules meant to control you. They're boundaries meant to soften you. What surprised me most was how much time we started spending outside, not because we were escaping the apartment, but because we were expanding our lives beyond it. On days when the room felt too close, I'd take my laptop to a cafe and work there for 90 minutes, just long enough to reset, Sometimes we'd walk to a bookstore and let our minds become wider than our walls. And on the hardest days, when everything felt dense, I learned to step out for 10 minutes. No destination, no productivity, just air. That tiny act made the apartment feel kinder when I returned. There's a psychological honesty to small living. If your space is cluttered, your mind feels it immediately. If your space is clear, your body relaxes faster. You can't hide from your environment. But the upside is just as real. You can change your environment quickly. A small apartment can be reset in minutes, and those minutes can become a daily ritual of care. If you want one small action from this, try reframing home this week. Choose one place outside, one cafe, one park loop, one quiet corner of your neighborhood, and make it your regular extension of living. Not as an escape, as a rhythm. Because sometimes the healthiest small space mindset is realizing your life was never meant to fit inside four walls. Your home can be the place you return to, and the city can be the place you breathe. When I think back to that first night, the one where I stood in the middle of the apartment and didn't know where to put my own body, I realized the room wasn't trying to shrink us. It was trying to teach us clarity. Living in about 400 square feet in Tokyo taught us a few simple truths that feel almost obvious now, but weren't obvious then. That small isn't a punishment, it's a prompt. That a space works when every corner has a purpose, and every object has a home. That multifunctional furniture isn't a trend here, it's a language. That vertical storage and clean sightlines don't just make a room look bigger, they make your mind feel less crowded. That the financial reality is real. Rent can be high even when space is tight, but proximity can buy back time, and time is its own kind of wealth. And maybe the biggest surprise? Your life doesn't have to fit inside your apartment. Sometimes the city becomes your living room, and your home becomes the quiet place you return to. If you want one practical thing you can do today, make it small enough that you won't resist it. Pick one surface, your desk, your kitchen counter, that chair that keeps collecting clothes, and clear it completely. Just once. Then decide what, if anything, is allowed to live there permanently. If it doesn't earn that spot, it moves. And for the next week, try one gentle rule, one in, one out. Not to be strict, to stay honest, to keep your space from becoming a storage unit for your stress. If this video helped you breathe a little easier, tap like, so it finds the people who need it too. And if you want more videos like this, real life, no perfection, go ahead and subscribe. I'm sharing what we're learning in Tokyo as we learn it. And I want to hear from you. What's the smallest space you've ever lived in? And what's the one hack or one mindset shift that actually made it feel like home? Leave it in the comments. I read them, and I'd love to feature a few in the next video, because the best lessons in small living are rarely learned alone.